Welcome, everyone. My name is Brian Weinberg. I'm the co-founder of the Foundation for Regeneration, and we're excited to gather today about a presentation on the circular economy in our recent report called the Material Flows Analysis. Before we get started, just a quick note about the Foundation for Regeneration. Our purpose is dedicated to creating meaningful demonstrations, meaningful placemaking projects that catalyze economic development and ecological health in Kansas City. And before we get into the presentation, I wanted to allow Bob, our co-founder, Bob Berkebile, um, to share a few words of wisdom.
I don't know about wisdom, but I'm Bob Berkebile. I'm a co-founder of the Foundation for Regeneration. And I'm excited about the fact that we have been taking a deep dive into a systems analysis of our community and specifically the Blue River Valley and the opportunities for new circular economic investments. And I believe, based on the research we've done and what's happening in the rest of the world, we're sitting on an explosive moment of opportunity. And we're excited to share some of that with you today.
So just we'll hand it off to Darren to be our MC and essentially present what we've been doing around Kansas City and beyond with the results of this work.
Great. I love it. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're with us. Again, Darren Beck, serve as a circular lead for the foundation. Again, thrilled to be working with Bob and Brian on this project and many others. Today, what we're going to go ahead and do is share with you a research project that we completed earlier this year in 2025. And I'll queue up some slides so we have an opportunity to kind of dive right in. Bear with me here for a moment, kind of shift into presentation mode, and off we go. All right, so as Brian had mentioned here a moment ago, this study very specifically was focused in on the Kansas City metropolitan area. And today we're going to go ahead and talk a bit about the circular economy to kind of get you set within the context of what we've completed, and at the same time to then walk you through the implications of this material flow analysis, right? Again, to Bob's point, I think we're sitting here on the next industry cluster for the metropolitan area, and by the time we kind of work our way through here, I think you'll agree. All right, so as we think about what that circular economy is, kind of fits beautifully into the concept of regeneration. Kind of regeneration, again, is a sort of a new approach, a step beyond sustainability in terms of how do we go about restoring and revitalizing the ecosystems that we're working within. It's an approach that business can take in many ways of kind of leaving no footprint behind. And as a part of that, it requires us to take paradigms that we're currently within and shift them. And today, the economy that we're working in is probably better called a linear economy. So as you kind of look at the design before us, kind of thinking about where the input comes in as kind of raw materials and kind of leaves on the backside as residual waste. Essentially, every time you want to make a product, what you're doing is you're going over and you're taking, right, kind of mining out that material, kind of harvesting all this virgin material, fashioning it into something, making it, and then at the end of the day, really kind of throwing it out into the marketplace in such a way that it's really just disposable. So you're wasting it at the end of the day. So that linear concept of every time you want to make a new product, you got to go take something, make it, and then you're just designing it to throw it away. So the idea from a circular economy standpoint is, can we get to a point where we can begin alleviating a lot of the virgin materials we're going after and taking advantage of a lot of the refined materials that are already in the marketplace and just keep them circulating at their highest value and get to a point where you never throw anything away, hopefully, at that point. And then that's, again, kind of closing off those ends to where you can kind of rethink the design for products that last longer, products that can be reused, products that can be repaired more easily, kind of remanufactured more easily. And if nothing else, at the end of the day, make sure the constituent parts can be recycled more easily. It's kind of just thinking about the whole value chain that you see represented through here. And again, kind of moving towards something that's more circular in nature. From a regenerative standpoint, that gives the earth some time to heal from a lot of the strip mining that's going on, and ecosystems to come back and begin flourishing, and certainly takes a lot of pressure off the carbon we're putting into the atmosphere along the way too. So with that as a premise, we took that idea, that concept, and began some of the early work to make a business case for making that shift from a linear economy to a circular economy in the Kansas City metropolitan area. And that doesn't happen solely with as kind of a one-party initiative. It's something that required a number of parties to come to the table. With the Foundation for Regeneration at the lead, we were looking for a renowned organization that did, again, just as Bob had mentioned, phenomenal work around systems analysis. And we found that that Metabolic certainly fit that bill. They've been working within the EU for many years with a number of cities and other number of regions around how they could begin mapping towards a circular economy. They had done it in 2018, the first time coming across the pond to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then again for Boulder, Colorado. Kansas City in the metropolitan area kind of stepped up, and we are now the third city / kind of region to lean in and do this type of analysis. That happened because we had the city of Kansas City, Missouri, anchoring this project, funding the majority of the money to kind of get it going, but happened even more appropriately because we found that Johnson County, Kansas, and also the Mark Solid Waste Management District, which covers 5 counties on the Missouri side of the metro area, kind of threw in some additional funding that allowed us to kind of take that scope out to the whole 9-county Kansas City metropolitan area. So what you see before you here is then an opportunity to kind of look at the overall results in just a snapshot. 3 columns that you see along the way that I'll spell out here for you. The first one on the left kind of talks about where the materials that we're discarding today in the Kansas City area originate. The middle column kind of shows what the composition of those materials are from the greatest volume, kind of stack ranked all the way down to kind of the smallest volume. And then the column on the right-hand side really gets you to a point where you can start looking at what's the disposition of it at the end of the day? Where is it going? Where is it flowing? The top line here is that we is a Kansas City metropolitan area. This is looking at the year for 2023, generating nearly 3 million tons of discarded material in a single year, right? A lot of that's coming from the commercial and the industrial side. That's about 45% of the overall volume that's being produced. The next tranche down is coming from homes, coming from residential areas, really any particular unit that's going to be having 6 families or less kind of living within it. If you get into apartments of a larger size than that, that actually kind of comes into the commercial and industry bucket. But the residential piece, that's representing about 28% of the overall volume. Next tranche down is construction and demolition debris from any kind of either new constructions being built or any kind of demolitions that are coming down. And the last tranche, which is going to be something we run into a lot within this research, is sort of an unknown, right? In some cases, again, we'd love for the data to be even more accurate, but that's certainly a project to begin kind of working on as we continue to refine this effort in years to come. On the middle side, again, organics stands tall in terms of where most of that material is being represented. That's going to be everything from your yard waste on into food waste. It might be trees that have been felling through the area. Could be biosolids coming out of our wastewater sewer systems. Paper and cardboard comes down next. Construction and demolition debris is a large tranche. And get into some of that mixed unknown with some data we'd like to refine moving forward. Special waste can be everything from tires on into mattresses, some of the things, again, that are a bit bulkier. At the same time, too, we like to kind of keep out of landfills as best we can, plastics and so on. On the far right side, again, just kind of looking at the disposition of all this material, what we've come to find is that, yep, I'm going to kind of skip down to the middle piece of it. We are diverting some of this from landfills, right? About 15%, including those biosolids that come out of our wastewater treatment plants, are being captured and put toward compost. And kind of the biosolids included within there because they're being land applied in many cases for a lot of agriculture and farmers in the area. We recycle about 7% when you think about what's being picked up on the curbside, the things you might drop off in a local area. And we put about 1% towards waste to energy through some incineration that takes place in Sugar Creek, combined with a cement kiln over there that they're using to kind of take anything that has BTU value and burn it cleaner than it would in terms of coal or the coke that they traditionally use. But the challenge here that we're all facing is that about 77% of what's being generated here in the metropolitan area is still going into a hole, still going to landfills. And that's certainly not only the challenge, but we see the opportunity here kind of moving forward. All right, so we also, as part of the study, not only looked at what material do we have to work with because of what's being produced, we also looked at what the environmental impact would be associated with this. And this could be the amount of environmental impact that would be associated with creating the material in the first place, certainly kind of as it works its way through the system and is being used, and then when it's being discarded. And so again, kind of interpret all of the data you see before you. On the left-hand column, you're seeing all the different types of material that we categorized that's being discarded in the metropolitan area. We looked at the quantity, so you saw that on the previous slide too, just the overall volume. I'm sorry, poundage and sort of overall kind of tons as a whole, so the weight of it. There you go. And then in addition to that, as you continue to move to the right, what you're seeing is that the carbon footprint that would be associated with each of those pieces of material, the amount of agricultural land that had to be occupied to be able to generate that material in the very first place, and the water usage associated with that too. So I'll bring my cursor along here. Let's see if we can point out a few things, maybe just a couple, and then we'll move on. One would be essentially to look at the outsized impact that some of these materials have. Let's look at textiles as an example, right? Fairly small amount of sort of this light lavender stream kind of coming here across. Didn't make up a lot of the overall weight of the discarded materials, but my goodness, you look over here on the far right-hand side, and that 6% of the overall weight of the discarded materials it represents translates, I'm sorry, 3%, forgive me, 3% of that overall weight translates into 60% of the overall water usage that all the discarded materials that we're throwing away in the KC metro area account for in terms of impact. So well outsized in terms of its impact there. Look at electronic waste. It's a very kind of thin stream at the top, but it's sort of this light orange looking stream here, second down from the top, as it flows through very small quantities, about 0.5% of the discarded materials that by weight. But if you start looking at its carbon footprint, that 0.5% represents actually 6% of the overall carbon footprint as a whole. So we start needing to begin prioritizing where are we going to lean into this challenge, where we're going to find a way to take that 77% that's going to landfills and bring it back to the community in terms of value. So those are some of the things we're taking into consideration along the way. All right, here's where the results net out. As we think about how I can help interpret this graph for you along the way, you look on the y-axis going up and down. What you're measuring there again is tonnage. You're measuring the weight, which, like we've seen on the last couple of slides, as you kind of move up and down vertically, you're going to find how much each of those material streams weigh in terms of overall tonnage. If you look across the x-axis going horizontally left to right, what you're finding there is the value of those materials. Put it for you in this context, the value of those materials would be just their commodity value as recyclables. Again, changes every day, but this is sort of a snapshot in time. And you can figure out that, again, the further to the right it is, the more valuable it is. Again, the further up the chart it is, the more poundage, more tonnage we're looking at there as a whole. Last piece to help you kind of tease out the meaning of this is the number that is carried along with each of the streams that are plotted on this graph. And as a part of that, say, for instance, paper, you'll see a 683. You'll see that it's comes with a bit of a sphere around it too. It's a little bit larger than some of the others. 683 represents the number of jobs that could be created if we just began recycling the paper that's still out there to be captured. This chart only represents the 77% of those 3 million tons of discarded materials that are actually ending up in the landfill, right? So they're not being recycled today, not being composted today. Those are the ones that still bear some opportunity for us as a whole. And so here's how we've gone about prioritizing where to begin putting some effort and what this overall opportunity means, you're looking at $250 million of value that we essentially are putting in a hole every year in the Kansas City metropolitan area, right? So again, if you add up all of this in terms of its commodity value, just as recyclables, that's what you net out at. If we were to pivot that from this kind of linear economy we're in today, where it's very disposably oriented, into a circular economy, get some circular ventures up and running in the Kansas City area to lean into this opportunity, you're talking about more than 5,000 new jobs that could be created just in the metro area through this opportunity. Actually, let me give that to you in two parts. That's both direct jobs that come from kind of the collection and the processing of that, but those can also be, say, I think about 45% of that number are indirect jobs, which could be upstream, the folks who are producing the equipment that allows for some of this to be sorted and processed and so on. So about 55% kind of direct jobs, 45% indirect. So again, thinking about this as just being commodity value only, take a look at that cell phone that you often carry around with you, put it into just its material parts. Probably the materials that went into that phone only cost about $2 if you think about what it would take to actually gather the materials up to produce it. By the time you'd create that cell phone, if you only sold it as its individual constituent parts, probably the total value of that's about $200. And then if you look at the cell phone itself, when it finally comes together and all that it can do to kind of help you track your meetings and help you kind of call your loved ones and everything else, that's, what, $600 plus that you're going to get out of a device. So in that same manner that every time you kind of add and refine the product, you're adding value to it, know that this $250 million is, again, just at that materials level of value. We feel like by the time you start applying that refined value to this over time, we easily have a market cap here in the Kansas City metropolitan area in excess of $1 billion that could be created by leaning into these materials. All right, we're on the home stretch here. As we prioritized it, we found that these three that have been circled in green tend to be where we have the greatest opportunity we can start leaning into. Plastics, again, looking at 2,786 jobs that could be generated from that, a fairly large amount of it in terms of tonnage. Construction and demolition debris, again, maybe not quite as valuable in terms of the material stream, but at the same time, too, significant number of volume of that. And organics, whereas, again, you saw on the very first slide that we had a chance to be able to collect a fair amount of that today, we feel like there's even more value that could be wrung out of what's being collected and greater value that could be generated from what's not being collected so far. Okay, very quickly to kind of give you a sense of why we need to be looking beyond just recycling. This is a complicated chart that I'm going to make very easy for you to understand. When you look at the very bottom of this kind of value hill that we're pointing out, look on the left-hand side, you're at the raw material stage. Essentially says, once you get those materials in your hand, once you kind of produce that, every step forward to get to that top of the hill, you're putting time into it, you're putting money into it, you're putting labor into it, you're off-gassing a lot of carbon in the air through the energy that you're putting towards it. So every step up this hill is an investment of all of those factors that go together. So by the time you manufacture it, that's one step of investment. By the time you assemble it, another step of investment, and so on, distributing it out to the marketplace, finally to the point where it's getting used. So the key here, the lesson, the takeaway from this is essentially to say that we want to ensure from a circular economy perspective that we keep those materials in the marketplace, circulating at their highest value. The best thing you could do with a coffee table when you're done with it is give it to somebody else to use as a coffee table, right? So there's less energy kind of putting it back in play there. If you have to go about, kind of dropping it down to where maybe it's broken and it has to be repaired, there's some time, effort, money, labor that goes into to repairing it, but it's not as much as if you had to kind of build that coffee table back up from scratch. Next one down, if you had to, at the very least, kind of salvage some of the wood out of that, maybe that wood could be used for something else. That's, again, better than going about using that wood from virgin materials on the other side. But if you see the red line kind of dropping all the way down to the landfill or incineration, If it goes down that path, you've lost all the value that you put into it to get up to the top of the hill. So the idea is trying to figure out where we can be thinking, yes, about recycling, but what can we do beyond that? And here's a kind of quick tip to kind of show you why that's important. This is information that was put together by Gaia. It's the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives back in 2021. We looked at about 16 different countries, including the US, kind of figure out for every 2 jobs that you generate, either landfilling something or incinerating it, what could you be doing if you were able to take a different path? As you can see there as an example, if you took that organic material and composted it instead, what you're looking at is about 7 jobs that could be created instead of those 2. And it just grows exponentially from there. My goodness, if you took that material and you recycled it, 115 jobs, right? Versus 2 jobs. So you're, more than 50-fold, right? In terms of the overall increase. And then more importantly, this kind of gets us beyond just the story and conversation about recycling. If you can get into repair and you start thinking about even further upstream in terms of how you redesign products and look to kind of figure out, opportunities to reduce your usage of materials and reuse along the way, you get into a phenomenal number of jobs that can be created proportionally. And again, this is each job is kind of created for about 10,000 metric tons of material that'd be kind of going through the process. All right. Is this blue sky thinking, or is this something that's actually achievable? Metabolic, the consultant that we brought into the mix to help us out with a lot of the data crunching and the algorithms with this, they operate out of the Netherlands, and the Netherlands have been kind of hard pressed for having a lot of land to use in the past. And what you see before you is a picture of what materials collection facility looks like in the Netherlands. This is where today the country is recycling 80% of the discarded materials that they have there. Another 19% they're at least getting some waste to energy value out of through incineration. And only 1% today is going to the landfill. So again, with concerted effort, with the opportunity to be able to kind of think about this in a strategic fashion, this is doable. It's being done in pockets around the world. And we now stand poised at this opportunity to really take advantage of it. What's it take to kind of get us there? The report essentially tells us here are some of our headwinds, some of our challenges. Essentially, we've got this trend that's been developing over the last few decades around privatizing the whole discarded materials management process here locally. If you take a look at, say, for instance, different pockets around the city, you have had the local governments kind of stepping away from purchasing their own trucks, rolling those out to the curb, and essentially kind of doing pickup of garbage and recycling from its citizens. That's been kind of sent across to the private sector to handle, which today is receiving good service, but again, gives you some challenges around, let's say, flow control. That's one that Michael Shaw, the Director of Public Works for the City of Kansas City, Missouri, tends to talk about, which is if you want to start flowing this material towards something that's a higher value, something that's more of a circular venture along the way, it's important that you have this ability to control where it flows. And today, a lot of the local municipalities have kind of shifted that to the private sector, and is not always kind of the most efficient way to kind of get it into maybe a shift towards a new economy. Next piece is folks in the public works side throughout the metro area and folks on the economic development side. I'd love to say that they're sitting down having coffee with each other once a week on Monday mornings. It doesn't happen. If they're even getting together once a year to have conversations like we're having today, I'd be surprised and delighted. But for the most part, again, there's a bit of a gap between those two. It's not necessarily today yet a recognition as to why there's value for coming together, but if you can control the flow, which is the public works side of the materials, and then hand it off to the economic development team who can kind of recruit in and grow the ones that are already here, these circular ventures in town, even better for the upside. Mindset and education is something we have to work on in the area too. This speaks a little bit more to the residents of the metro area. Again, a lot of folks, myself included, oftentimes walk to the bin where I'm going to recycle some plastics and think twice about what's going to happen to that plastic when I put it into the bin, right? Is it really going to be recycled? Is it going to be reused in any kind of way? I think this ability kind of regains some of the trust on that level, and then kind of think about, again, why they should even make a trip to the recycle bin to begin with. What value is that? Is that bringing, oh, it's bringing jobs back to the area? Okay, well, that might be a little bit more of an incentive. Our opportunities, or some of the tailwinds that we have here, is that we can leverage regional collaboration. That's what brought the results of this research together. We had the city of KC-Mo, we had Mid-America Regional Council and the Solid Waste Management District that they've got, Johnson County, you know, 3 groups from across the 2 state lines coming together to make this possible. That type of regional collaboration is going to be something that really is needed to get the greatest opportunity kind of wrung out of this position we're now in. Beyond that, talked a little bit earlier about some of the challenges we have around data. It's not always transparent. Don't necessarily have full data for everything right now. There's an opportunity to refine that and get even better quality. But beyond that, again, we need to keep our eyes focused, yes, on recycling, but then sort of a yes, and what else can we do to kind of lean into reuse and repair? I'm looking forward to some of Brian's thoughts, some of Bob's thoughts here in a moment, but let me raise the ante one more for those kind of listening into the presentation. Once we get really good at this in terms of holding on to this material in the Kansas City area instead of letting it kind of slip through our fingers, wow, we really stand poised to leverage one of our other superpowers as a region, which is our intermodal advantage. We've got rivers, we've got rails, we've got roads. This picture kind of shows within that light gray area the commute from just a one-day trip kind of into the Kansas City region from all those methods, and we could begin aggregating this material, right? This is an opportunity for Kansas City to really start thinking about how do we bring it down from the north, south, east, and west, right? And from regions around us who have yet to kind of figure out what they want to lean into, and if the circular economy is a part of their path, we can become this sort of hub for secondary materials, giving even the most conventional manufacturers an opportunity to think, where might I want to put, you know, my new manufacturing operations if I want to avoid tariffs on the materials and not have to import them in, or even just kind of keep costs lower and in check. The other nice thing is, and Brian and I have talked about this often, is this whole research project that's just been completed. It puts the Kansas City metropolitan area in rarefied air. There are not many companies that cities, regions that have done this yet. So the question then becomes, what does that signal, right? We're essentially raising the flag to say we're serious about this. We've done the business case to kind of figure out what the opportunity would be. And there are a number of amazing organizations out there that are ready to begin kind of pouring investment into those regions, those areas that are primed and ready to begin kind of seizing this opportunity. One I'll point out just here as an example, the closed loop partners. Brian was able to make an introduction from the closed loop partners into the city of Kansas City, Missouri, here in the last few years. And as a part of that, they then connected with another group that they're very closely tied in with, which is the recycling partnership. And that led to a significant amount of money that was brought to bear for the city at 0% financing to be able to roll recycling carts out to the citizens for the very first time for again, us to be able to kind of start establishing some flow control, right, for those materials. There's plenty more we can lean into along the way. So with that, I'm going to take a moment, Brian. We've got other examples we can lean into. The beautiful thing about this report, which is also something you can find on our website, which is regeneration.us. As you go there, you can find the full report. And we've got many examples of a lot of different companies that can lean in to kind of help us to begin kind of thinking about taking care of these priorities we've identified. But yeah, gentlemen, I'll pause here for a moment and ask, what are your thoughts in terms of this? I mean, I feel like it's a pretty big deal that this has been done. That opportunity that's been laid before us is pretty extraordinary.
Absolutely, and thank you, Darren, for doing your beautiful presentation that you've done several times throughout the metro area, and now for the first time we have it memorialized for anybody to see at their leisure. And I just wanted to say that the Foundation for Regeneration isn't really interested in writing plans that sit on the shelf and collect dust. If you recall the Blue River Valley plan that we did, the Discovery Report, we identified the circular economy as a an industry worth exploring in that area. When we spent, about $1 million, instead of letting it collect dust, we spent about $1 million in pilots, which generated about $20 million worth of economic investment. We want to do something similar with this plan. Now that it's written, it's formed the foundation, and we are in a process of engaging our partners on this project and more. Feel free to reach out with your ideas and your resources. As you said, this is a $1 billion industry cluster, and we're well positioned to take advantage of it. So I'm just really thrilled that we got to this point, and I'm excited about continuing to convene the right people in Kansas City and beyond, bringing people here, going to different site visits. We've already generated, there's term sheets flying around already around projects that want to happen because they use this information. People want to make sure, these companies selecting sites, they want to make sure that you have the material that they need at a close distance. It's kind of, in some ways it makes a lot of sense just without all the buzzwords and circular words. It's just like, yeah, obviously if I'm making something and I need, widgets, and the widgets just happen to be sitting there ready as an input. And what's beautiful about the circular economy, I think, is, one group's output is the next group's input. So we're starting to think about, particularly in the Blue River Valley, which is perfect kind of for this, but many other areas in the metro area as well. But adjacent demonstrations or adjacent companies, literally, so you don't have any transportation costs, right? Because it costs a lot of money to truckload demolition material across town. Well, imagine the company that's making something unique out of demolition material is right next to that demolition recovery center. So when we think about, and that's just the fancy word for that is industrial symbiosis, but it's also just smart business. And so we're looking at opportunities like that. We're doing exactly what we said in our investment thesis, which is recruiting the best technology in the world to come to Kansas City, but also home growing these companies that are already doing it here. And looking at different sites that are unutilized that we can use to do that. So growing existing Missouri and Kansas companies, and also recruiting the best technology of the day. So, unfortunately, I have to go to another meeting in 2 minutes, so I might jump out. But that's my 2 cents. I'm really honored to do this work. I think it's incredibly important. We need more engagement from the powers that be. We're just sort of beginning to have those conversations, and I think a little bit can go a really long way in terms of the potential of realizing this. It's really already happening, but a more focused, organized economic development effort, certain curated events, even delegations to other events. We're just at the very beginning, and I'm excited to facilitate the investment from the organizations that you mentioned and other companies. I think Kansas City is a great place to do business. The metro area. I know everyone has their jurisdiction that they want to promote in that, and I think there's plenty of room for everyone in that cross-state collaboration. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'll leave it to Bob to do the final words of wisdom and takeaway from his perspective.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Darren, for a great presentation again. That really makes this more clear. I think the one thing that I didn't hear you say is that we're spending, you talked about the $250 million worth of valuable materials we're burying in holes around the city that we call landfills. I don't think you mentioned that we're spending more than $250 million to create those landfills and bury that valuable material in those landfills.
That's right. I think the latest numbers I've heard our friends over at Mark penciling out would be roughly $500 million we're already spending today to gather those materials, oftentimes just to put them in a hole. Yes, correct.
That's insanity. And I think it's just typical of our obsolete thinking. And it's typical of not looking at the whole system enough to understand it. And what's unique about this moment is I believe that we brought the world experts, Metabolic, to help us analyze precisely what's happening and what opportunities we're missing with data. And so now investors and communities who see this opportunity can make informed decisions about what their part in this transformation is. And as some of you know, I've spent a lot of time as an architect trying to change the built environment to mimic nature more carefully. And one of the unique things, if the science is done, we always find that nature wins all the gold medals for efficiency, because in nature, everyone's waste is someone else's diet.
Right.
There is no waste. That term doesn't apply to nature. And the truth is, we are a part of nature, and we embrace the concept of nature for the first time. And so it's very inefficient, it's very expensive, it's wrong-minded, it creates pollution, it creates water quality problems, etc. And just by creating real data to make well-informed decisions in our communities and in our new businesses, we can transform this, turn it on its head, and create significant industries in the heart of America. And as Darren pointed out, spread that service through Central America in the very near future. I'm excited about this moment. Darren, I appreciate you telling the story so clearly, and we'd love to hear from any of you that are interested and would like to work with us to make this happen. But I think it is one of the most significant economic activities in the heart of America and in this country in my lifetime. I'm excited about it.
Bob, you've left us uplifted, inspired. Thank you again for sharing this kind of parting words, and thank you to everyone who's ready to reach out and engage us along the way. We look forward to working with you. Take care.